Now, breaking news from WSFA 12 News.
Welcome to this WSFA 12 News special report celebrating Selma. Breaking news coverage today of a historic event in Alabama, the commemoration marking a moment that changed our state and the entire country. This weekend, as you can see live, thousands of people are in Selma to mark the 50th anniversary of Bloody Sunday. That's the day civil rights marchers marching for voting rights were beaten and gassed as they crossed Selma's Edmund Pettus Bridge, which you see in the background of this picture. Now, days later, a successful march finally reached the state capitol in Montgomery, and it was just a short time after that that Congress passed the 1965 Voting Rights Act, ensuring equal voting rights for all. As you can see from that live picture, thousands of people on Broad Street right there in front of the Edmund Pettus Bridge, and that is where a stage is set up. That is where we will hear from President Barack Obama later today. He will speak along with other dignitaries, including Congressman John Lewis, who was there on Bloody Sunday. Governor Robert Bentley also invited to Selma today, and you can count on WSFA 12 News for live Team 12 coverage. Reporter Melissa Johnson continues our team coverage now from Selma, and she's with Governor Robert Bentley, who is also marking this historic occasion. Melissa?
Well, good morning, Mark. We're just about a block away or so from the base of the Edmund Pettus Bridge. Governor Robert Bentley has had a very busy morning here, speaking with media really all over the country, all over the world. But I've heard you say several times that you are honored to host all of these guests here today.
Well, we really are. We want to welcome people from all over the country and from all over the world who are coming to this commemoration that we're having today. You know, 50 years ago, this was a very significant day, and we need to honor the men and women who were involved in that, really searching for the ability to vote.
Air Force One, we're expecting at Maxwell Air Force just in a short bit of time. Let's go back to Tanya Terry, who is there live. And Tanya, do we have an updated arrival time yet?
Yes, Mark. They're landing right now, wheels down. This is Air Force One landing right now, yes. And here they are, ladies and gentlemen. There's the president getting off Air Force One. You can hear the crowd behind me. Maybe you can over the roar of these engines. I'm not sure you can, but there he is with Sasha and Malia right behind him. Mrs. Obama behind the girls, and then, of course, that is her mother behind her.
Well, we just had an announcement of some of the people who will be sitting on that stage. There is Mayor George Evans, Governor Robert Bentley, and Congresswoman Terry Sewell. They are taking their steps right now on the stage ahead of the president's speech. So we can only imagine that the president will be coming out in just a few minutes. From where I am standing, I can see Congressman John Lewis. I'm assuming he will be coming out next, now that these three have been announced. Let's listen. And here comes the President of the United States. The First Lady and the President. Well, she went back in for a moment there. There we go. We have another president, a former president of the United States. We have President George Bush and First Lady Laura Bush. They are also heading to the stage. Behind them, President Barack Obama and First Lady Michelle Obama. You can hear the presidential music as both presidents take the stage. Also walking with them on the other side of the First Lady is Georgia Congressman George Lewis. And you can see former President George Bush waving to the crowd. You can see the President and the First Lady also waving to the crowd, and right behind them, Georgia Congressman George Lewis. They are all on the stage. It has been a very, very long day. This trip was delayed for about 50 minutes, so everyone I'm sure here is so happy to see that they are here and the program is about to begin.
Alabama is a different state today than it was in 1965, and so is our nation. We've come a long way since the events of that Bloody Sunday. Selma changed America. Selma changed the world.
To do. I present to you the civil rights icon, John Lewis.
On March 7, 1965, a few innocent children of God some carrying only a bedroll, a few clutching a simple bag, a plain purse, or a backpack, were inspired to walk 50 dangerous miles from Selma to Montgomery to demonstrate the need for voting rights in the state of Alabama. On that day, 600 people marched into history, walking two by two down the sidewalk. Our country will never, ever be the same because of what happened on this bridge. It is a great honor for me to return to my home state of Alabama, to present to you, not to introduce to you, but to present to you the President of the United States. If someone had told me when we were crossing this bridge that one day I will be back here introducing the first African-American president, I would have said, you're crazy, you're out of your mind, you don't know what you're talking about. President Barack Obama.
As John noted, there are places and moments in America where this nation's destiny has been decided. Many are sites of war: Concord and Lexington, Appomattox, Gettysburg. Others are sites that symbolize the daring of America's character: Independence Hall and Seneca Falls, Kitty Hawk and Cape Canaveral. Selma is such a place. In one afternoon, 50 years ago, so much of our turbulent history, the stain of slavery and anguish of civil war, the yoke of segregation and tyranny of Jim Crow, the death of 4 little girls in Birmingham, and the dream of a Baptist preacher, all that history met on this bridge. And because of men and women like John Lewis, Joseph Lowry, Hosea Williams, Amelia Bunting, Diane Nash, Ralph Abernathy, C.T. Vivian, Andrew Young, Fred Shuttlesworth, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., so many others, the idea of a just America, and a fair America, an inclusive America, and a generous America, that idea ultimately triumphed. What could more profoundly vindicate the idea of America than plain and humble people, unsung, the downtrodden, the dreamers not of high station, not born to wealth or privilege, not of one religious tradition, but many, coming together to shape their country's course. What greater expression of faith in the American experiment than this? What greater form of patriotism is there than the belief that America is not yet finished, that we are strong enough to be self-critical, that each successive generation can look upon our imperfections and decide that it is in our power to remake this nation to more closely align with our highest ideals. That's why Selma is not some outlier in the American experience. That's why it's not a museum or a static monument to behold from a distance. It is instead the manifestation of a creed written into our founding documents. The Voting Rights Act was one of the crowning achievements of our democracy, the result of Republican and Democratic efforts. President Reagan signed its renewal when he was in office. President George W. Bush signed its renewal when he was in office. 100 members of Congress have come here today to honor people who are willing to die for the right to protect it. If we want to honor this day, let that 100 go back to Washington and gather 400 more and together pledge to make it their mission to restore that law this year. That's how we honor those on this bridge.
President Barack Obama now mingling with audience members in Selma following a very well-received speech. You could hear lots of people cheering him on at certain moments throughout his speech. The president in Selma marking the 50th anniversary of Bloody Sunday. Let's go back to our own Valerie Lawson, who is standing by at the foot of the Edmund Pettus Bridge, and that is where the president and other dignitaries are expected to take a march of their own in reenactment of sort of a, so to speak, of the marches that happened 50 years ago. Valerie?
Well, Mark, people are starting to leave. The president spoke about 10, 15 minutes ago, so the crowd is slowly but surely dispersing, but there are people who are still here hoping to get a glimpse of the president and hopefully a picture, a wave, or something, some kind of attention from the president. We are expecting him to take a march or a walk across the Edmund Pettus Bridge with his family, his two daughters, his wife, his mother-in-law. They're all here. They were front and center as the president spoke today, and they are starting to move as we speak. I can see Martin Luther King III walking along the bridge. I can see Dr. Fred Reese, also one of the members of the Courageous Eight that helped bring Dr. King to Selma many, many years ago, 50 years ago, to move those voting rights issues along. They are now moving slowly but surely across the Edmund Pettus Bridge, Mark.
Indeed, Valerie, it's an interesting sight with that truck and all the photographers and videographers who are getting shots of this. This is the second time, we assume it is the second time that President Obama has walked across this bridge, because he was in Selma for this very same anniversary back in 2007. And I noticed, Valerie, the march is moving rather slowly. It will likely take some time, but I'm sure that's by design, because there are some older people who are in that group.
Yes, and it's also an opportunity to just kind of soak in the history of things. You said that the president was here back in 2007, and yes, he may have walked across the Edmund Pettus Bridge, but this one has got to be just a little bit more important, because he is doing this march with his family. He is with his two daughters, his wife, his mother-in-law, and they are taking this historic march together. They will be able to tour the National Voting Rights Museum together. So although he may have visited in 2007 and he may have marched across the Edmund Pettus Bridge, this one is different because this is a family event, Mark.
Well, he's also a sitting president this time. Let's just pause for a moment and soak in what's happening, both visually and audibly, and let's hear what it would be like for us to be in Selma. Let's pause. Valerie, it looks like they've reached the crest of the bridge, and it is at that point where you can begin to see what is on the other side. So it must have been at that point where the marchers in 1965 could see the state troopers and other law enforcement officers who were waiting for them on the other side of the bridge. And it appears as though the march is pausing at the crest of the bridge right now.
It does, and this is where Congressman John Lewis talks about getting to the top of the bridge and looking down and seeing a sea of blue, state troopers at the foot of the bridge on horseback. So I'm assuming that they are pausing at the top of the bridge to just kind of reflect on that moment. I am sure John Lewis, Congressman John Lewis, is leading the march right now. So this is a time for him to explain to everyone who is involved in the march right now what it was like to cross, get to the top of the bridge, and to look down and see the state troopers. And as they got closer, the troopers telling them that they have a couple of minutes to turn around. And according to Lewis, before they could even think about turning around, they were attacked.